All right, for everyone who's just joining us, I am Jack with the Cardboard Herald, and if you haven't seen it, I have done a review of Journeys in Middle-earth, both overall for the game and a post-campaign final thoughts for the initial campaign Bones of Arnor. You can check that out, but as opposed to the more tightly knit and scripted version of those, I have just last night finished the Hunt for the Ember Crown campaign, the first DLC expansion-ish campaign thingy, and I have lots of footage, I have lots of thoughts, and so I thought that I would take the time to talk through my thoughts on that campaign as well as this Villains of Eriador figure pack that was sent to me. So let's get straight to it. For the overview, what is this campaign? So the Hunt for the Ember Crown is a campaign that took 9 missions for my wife and I to complete it. We played with 2 characters. She was playing as Aragorn, I was playing as Elena. She's the captain, I'm the bard, and we played through 9 chapters. Now, what's interesting about this campaign is it felt like it could have been done in less chapters. There were moments where you definitely felt like there were forking paths. This kind of felt like there were up to 2 kind of side missions within. Now, the campaign itself is a story in which you are searching for the Ember Crown, a flower. If you were expecting this to be hidden jewelry in a dragon's hoard, well, I have news for you. The Ember Crown is not a literal crown. But you are doing it in the Blue Mountains, which if you aren't up on your Tolkien lore, the Middle-earth map has the Blue Mountains in the northwest of Middle-earth beyond the Shire, as opposed to the rest of the stories, which tend to take place going from the Shire to the east. And that alone gives it an interesting twist. One of the things about the basic campaign is that it is very focused on having specific beats, highlights of Tolkienian lore that you have to hit on, right? You know, certain moments, maybe they aren't literal moments that are replicating things from the books, but they are key moments where it's like, oh, if you're going to have a heroic campaign set in Middle-earth, then you have to do X and you have to do Y. But by going to the Blue Mountains, you're already setting it apart from the rest of the most well-known stuff in the Tolkien library. The actual nuts and bolts of the campaign, I'm not going to get into the reason you're hunting for the Ember Crown, but the other kind of oeuvre, the other motif, the theme that you'll be playing with is wargs. There are a lot of wargs in this, and that's going to take me to one of my favorite things, so we might as well get to the awesome stuff of this campaign, is that the Hunt for the Ember Crown gives you the first true villain, or I guess antagonist would be the better way of putting it, in Journeys in Middle-earth. Now, don't get me wrong, in the base game you had Golgatar and Adorin, which, I mean, they're fine, but also pretty forgettable. But in the Hunt for the Ember Crown, you have Colfang, which I love Colfang. Check out Colfang. I actually painted Colfang, which I haven't done a lot of painting in a long time. So you can tell that I really cared a lot about Colfang. Now, I don't think I'm spoiling too much because Colfang is introduced from the very first mission, and you get a lot of development to this character. Not to say that there's a lot of character development, as in like changes, like she's not a particularly nuanced character, but for a board game and for a Fantasy Flight game, this is one of the more intriguing characters, antagonist or otherwise. I was really delighted by that. So already it has memorable characters that I'm invested in that aren't just the player characters, which speaks to it being a more interesting story and campaign that you're playing through. It was surprising because it doesn't have to replicate all of those moments that you expect out of a Tolkien thing. Outside of that, the things that I liked most are the forking paths, the optional adventures, but also the interesting things that you do within the campaign. There are certain missions that were surprising in the victory conditions for the mission, or the kind of twists and turns that it developed into something else that it wasn't initially. It doesn't blow the whole game wide open and reinvent itself, but I felt like pound for pound, each mission was more interesting, both from a setup perspective and it was more interesting in a tactical perspective. With the two of us, we were much more often organizing exactly what we needed to do in order to win, and often it was by the skin of our teeth. Most often we did win. In fact, we won all but 2 chapters in this whole thing, but they were very close calls, and it felt like we had to be very smart in order to earn the wins that we had, which feels really cool. So I think that this campaign feels more interesting, like an elevated version, almost like a more concise and better version of the best parts of the base game campaign. So that is really high praise. Now, let's get into some of the things I think it could have done better. First off, this campaign, while I think the setting and the plot are far more interesting than the Bones of Arnor, it tries to sound like Tolkien himself, which is fine. Like, I'm not holding him up on a pedestal or anything, but I think that he had a very particular sound to the writing, and when it's done poorly, when it's imitated, it's really noticeable. And I wish that the writers at FFG had kind of used their own voice. Yes, using the setting, because I totally encourage anyone to interpret Middle-earth in any way that you can, but I think it's a mistake to try to sound like the way that Lord of the Rings sounds. Now, speaking of, this also seemed to be a little bit less edited. I did notice there were some spelling mistakes, some formatting, some typos in the text. I mean, there's a ton of text, and it's only $7 for this DLC, so I don't blame them because they had to get a bunch out, and of course it wasn't the big main thing, but it was noticeable compared to the original. Didn't hurt anything, so I could care less. The final thing that I would say is a criticism of this campaign is in some ways a little bit unfair, because it's a criticism of the base game itself as well. It's that we did fantastic, losing only 1 chapter up until the final confrontation. We were a fantastic team. I am a musician, she's the captain, we're buffing each other constantly. She can swing heavy, I can do a lot of damage through Pierce, and the people that I can't kill, I can at least stun. And when we got to the final mission, I don't know what we could have done better, but we lost. And it's not because of bad luck, because we crushed it. Like, we were doing lots of damage and we were making full use of our capabilities. And it wasn't because we sustained too much damage, because we didn't die. Like, we were surviving and making smart use of everything that we were doing. And it wasn't that we made poor use of our actions, because it felt like, at least for everything else that we had done in the game, with over 20 games under our belt leading up to this point, we were making very smart and tactical use of our actions, and yet we just ran out of time with only 24 possible threat that we could have burning at 4 a turn, and nothing on the board that seemed to indicate that we would be accruing less threat. We just did not have enough actions, and I don't know if that's because we didn't have enough characters. Like, if we were playing with a 4-character party, would we have been able to do much better? Would it have scaled in a different way? Or was it because we just had a bad pairing of characters, which seems ridiculous because, like I said, up until that point, it felt like we were very powerful. And the thing about Journeys in Middle-earth is it's a fail-forward game, and even if you fail the final mission, you can't go back and redo anything. And I really think that's a misstep on Fantasy Flight's part. It leaves you on kind of a sour note to finish this campaign and be like, wow, I guess everything that we work towards is all lost at this point. And the only way that we're going to regain that is to play through 9 missions again. And if you're averaging an hour to 2 hours per mission, that's a huge amount of time. And maybe their intent was that you were going to immediately play through again and it gave replay value, but it actually, I think, does the opposite for me. Because if I had the ability to replay and study and learn and finish that campaign and feel fulfilled, like my characters have a viable chance, then I probably would immediately start again with new characters and be like, okay, now let's see what they do and see what these branching paths are. And instead, I'm kind of like, well, that was a lot of fun, and I really learned my characters, and I liked that, but I don't want to go through all the way again and then figure out that my two characters just don't really do enough at the end. Just make it so that if you fail the final mission, that you have the ability to replay it. I mean, it's my stuff. It's not costing Fantasy Flight anything for me to be able to do that. I will play Hunt for the Ember Crown again. I just don't know that it's going to be anytime soon. I'll probably play it after I've played another new campaign. Maybe I'll start through the whole saga all over again with some new characters, maybe with some new expansion characters. But speaking of which, we need to talk about this here. Villains of Eriador. Now, this is a figure pack that has 3 figures in it, and if you remember from my base game review, one of the concerns that I had with the game was that there weren't enough sculpts, and this gives you a unique sculpt for Golgatar and Adoran. Man, they look super cool. And then, of course, Kolfang, who we've already talked about, and then there's also a couple of titles and some trinkets in here as a nice little bonus. I really like this pack. I think it's really cool. That said, Golgatar and Adoran are not in the Ember Crown at all, so I haven't used those figures yet. I am surprised that at certain points in which there were orc captains, that Golgatar wasn't used as an orc captain. I mean, come on, he looks so cool. Fantasy Flight, give us an option to use that if you mark that you have the content, which is very easy to integrate. Then you have Kolfang, who, as I said, looks incredible, and I want to paint all 3 of these guys. They are very well sculpted minis. Then the trinkets and titles. I marked that I have this, and I think the campaign itself, the Hunt for the Ember Crown, is built in such a way that you are likely to get at least one of these things. I didn't get any of them. I think I saw one moment in which I could have possibly gotten something and we weren't able to because of time left in that particular mission. I mean, I think this is cool, and if it weren't sent to me, I probably would get it myself. But is it something that you are going to get knowing full well that if you've already played through at least the base game campaign, you're not going to use 2 of those figures, and the titles and trinkets might not come up if you are playing either campaign? Who knows? They're just procedurally generated things that the system knows you do have and could possibly be something that you could obtain. So I think they're cool, and I think this pack is cool, and I overall am really impressed with the Ember Crown campaign and think of it as the better campaign to play through, and in fact would have no problem introducing someone to the game and saying, you know what, we're going to do Ember Crown, because I think that's the cream of the crop. But there are a couple concerns there that I hope you take into consideration when you're deciding what you want to get. But if you're like me, you're a Tolkien guy, and you already like Journeys in Middle-earth, I definitely recommend going through the campaign. And then if you really, really like your collections, maybe you like doing a little bit of painting, or you just want to have a little bit of everything, or you really like the villains and intend to go through the campaigns again, then, well, Villains of Eriador is there for you. And that is it. I know this was a little bit rambly, but I had some Tolkien things to talk about. I wanted to just kind of run through my overall thoughts. More of the videos that you'll find on this channel are much tighter, put together, and I think you will find something a little bit different there. But if you liked this video, you liked what I had to say, or you have questions about anything Tolkien, Middle-earth, Journeys in Middle-earth, anything around here, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald. If you enjoyed this video, we have all kinds of other reviews, interviews, and recommendations via writing, podcasts, and video here on our channel and website cardboardherald.com. Our content is audience supported, so if you want to show your support, please visit our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Cardboard Herald.